I had an out-of-body experience about 10 years ago that changed my life, and a big part of it had to do with language. It's hard to even put into words what exactly I experienced just because of the limits of human language. Basically, it made me a believer that it's possible for a form of language or telepathic communication to happen through the medium of music, which sounds very crazy, I know. Had I not had this out-of-body experience myself, I would think it were crazy too. And I really didn't even want to go into detail about this on my channel because I know that there's a lot of closed-minded people out there, and I just didn't feel like dealing with the criticism. But I'm continuing to get these messages through the music, and I know it's because it's pushing me to talk about this. And the messages that are coming through the music aren't something that just I'm getting. There's plenty of people who are receiving this communication, but only a handful of people willing to make videos about it. And really, I think this form of communication has always been taking place. It's just that we've been asleep for a long time and we didn't have ears to hear, but that's changing now that a lot of people are starting to wake up. So yeah, I had my out-of-body experience about 10 years ago, and I've never experienced anything like it since. It's very hard to describe because there are actually no words in any human language that can really come close to conveying the magnitude of it. But I'll try. So me and my friend were sitting on the couch in my living room. It was just a regular day. I had one of my prayer books on the table from earlier, and out of boredom just kind of decided that I'd read one of the short prayer meditations out loud to my friend. It was like maybe, I want to say 2 or 3 pages, if that. And at the time I didn't feel like there was anything particularly special about this prayer or that it was somehow different from the other prayer meditations in that book. In fact, I really don't even remember the details of what the prayer meditation said. I just remember there was some part in the prayer that talked about a path or taking some kind of path. So I remember reading that part, and then to this day, I have no idea why I stood up, but I stopped reading in the middle of the prayer and I stood up. I don't know why I stood up, but I just stood up. The moment I stood up, I was in 2 places at once. The only way I can describe it to you is that I lifted out of my body, but I was still aware of my physical body, if that makes sense. I guess you can say it was my soul that lifted out of my body. I don't know how to describe it. I was standing in my living room, but simultaneously inside my mind's eye, I was inside of some kind of vortex. It was an actual place. I physically felt myself pulled out of my body like there was some kind of slow motion reverse gravity. And that wasn't even the most surprising part. What absolutely blew my mind was the feeling that I got and the sound of the music. Earlier in the day, we had put a CD in, and the song that was playing at the time was an Avant song. It wasn't even turned up that loud. I wasn't even paying attention to the Avant song in the background until this happened. When I lifted out of my body, the song got so incredibly loud. It was like my sense of hearing had heightened or something. The song on the CD turned into what sounded like, it had to have been a million or at least thousands and thousands of voices all singing together in perfect harmony. It's hard to explain. It sounded like the actual singer's voice kind of faded into the background, and the instruments of the song became the singers instead. So it was like the song got turned inside out, and the artist's voice, Avant's voice, sounded like an instrument in the background, and the of the song, and then like the actual instruments in the song, including the bass, sounded like the vocals of the song, if that makes sense. And all the instruments, even the bass, was composed of these thousands of beautiful voices. I wish I could explain it better, but I can't. They were all one, but at the same time, it sounded like thousands and thousands of heavenly, beautiful voices made up of male and female voices that all sang together to create this perfect harmony. The pattern of notes, or what do you call it? The notes of the harmony was something I could never even have imagined. Oh my God. And the meaning behind the sound was, oh my God, they were singing about God. They were singing about how much God loves us. And the feeling was, see, it's hard to talk about this because there are no actual words in any human language that can describe the feeling. The feeling was like, imagine a time in your life when you felt the most loved and the most cherished, and multiply it by literally a trillion, and that doesn't even come slightly close to the feeling. The word love isn't even an accurate enough word. Maybe life itself, the word life, probably comes a little closer to describing the feeling, more than the word love. But I mean, these words, the feeling was so far beyond either of these words. The emotion was an actual physical sensation in my body, especially in my head and in my chest. It was like ecstasy, like pure bliss. It was kind of weird because even though I lifted out of my body, I could still feel this blissful physical sensation in my body. But the music gave me more than a feeling of love and ecstasy. It took me to an actual place. Even though my physical body was standing in my living room, inside my mind, I could see this vortex that I was inside of. The direction of the vortex, it didn't look like it stretched out in front of me. It was like, it looked like it was way above my head. It seemed like it stretched out forever. And I know I wasn't just imagining this place because I don't have the capability to imagine such a place. My soul was inside of this vortex it was slightly spinning very, very slowly while I was slowly floating up through it. And I just knew that it was God that I was slowly floating up to. It was like nothing I've ever seen. It was weird. It was like everything was kind of foggy looking in this place. Or maybe foggy is not the right word. I would say it looked more translucent. It was very vast and endless looking. It stretched out as far as my mind's eye could see. And in the distance, I could see other souls that were inside of this vortex with me who were also slowly floating up to God. And I kind of got the sense that I was somehow connected to all of those souls inside the vortex. And I got the sense that there was a female next to me, but I couldn't make out what she looked like. It was like she was to my side or maybe slightly behind me. Now I say floating up to God, but I never saw God or anything like that. I didn't even see any angels, but the feeling I got, it was just a knowing. Some things you just know when it happens to you. And I knew that this vortex was some kind of place that connects souls directly to God. That's the only way I can describe this place using human language. I know this is going to sound strange, but while I was there, I experienced what I can only describe as telepathic communication. But what's odd is it wasn't even like it was a conversation. It was only 2 words. And I don't even know who gave me this message, but it was clear as day. Someone telepathically transferred the words groove theory to me. And to this day, I have no idea what that message means, but I'm assuming it means something important, but the phrase groove theory, what it means, I don't know. But yeah, like I said, the moment I lifted out of my body, the song playing in the background totally changed to the point of where it was unrecognizable. I found a clip that kind of can give you an idea of what I heard, but really this clip doesn't do my experience any justice at all. It's more of like a very crude comparison. The voices I heard seemed more like lighter and airy than the ones on this clip. And it seemed like there were thousands of voices. But I'll go ahead and play this short clip. So yeah, it took me forever to find anything that even remotely sounded like what I heard, but like I said, that clip doesn't even really come close to what I heard, but it's the best I can find. And keep in mind, the song that was playing in the background was just like your average R&B song, but the moment I lifted out of my body, that's when it changed. So while all of this was happening, I could feel my eyes, like my physical eyes, getting bigger and bigger. To me, it felt like my eyes were just relaxing when they were getting wider and wider. I found out from my friend after the fact that to him, it looked like I was standing there in a state of shock. While I was out of my body, my friend kept asking me if I was scared over and over again. At first, I couldn't answer him. I just stood there. I couldn't speak. There was literally so much love and bliss that I could not speak. And to be honest, trying to carry on a conversation with my friend while all this was going on, was the last thing I felt like doing anyway. But he kept asking me over and over again, are you scared? Are you scared? Eventually, I was able to focus my attention on him enough to be able to shake my head no. But it was like as soon as I started to focus on my friend and what he was saying, I started to remember what the word scared meant. While I was in that vortex, I couldn't comprehend or understand what fear even was. That concept did not even register with me. But it was like the moment I acknowledged fear, I acknowledged what fear meant by listening to my friend, I immediately started to come back down to my body. And when I started to come back into my body, the CD that was playing in the background went back to sounding normal. And the feeling of being alive with God's love started to fade away. And then it was over. I was totally back in my body. Every time I think about that experience, I wish my friend hadn't been there. I wish I had just been by myself. But yeah, it was a really life-changing experience. It's like my entire state of consciousness changed. I was still me when that happened, but it's like it's hard to explain. It's really hard to explain. I had never had any kind of experience like that before in my life, and I have never had any experience like that since. But what changed for me after that day is the meaning behind the lyrics of songs that I'd hear. After that experience, whenever I'd listen to music, sometimes the words in songs would have different definitions. Now I don't get the sound of 1,000 voices that only happened that one time, and songs still sound like they have just the one voice coming from the original artist singing it. But what I continue to hear in songs is the deeper meaning behind the words. They have their own form of language that I was never able to pick up on before I had my OBE. Now, the music language has many different ways of conveying a message. Sometimes it's through metaphors in the lyrics, sometimes it's through homophones or musical synchronicities, and other times the lyrics have a more literal meaning. But that literal meaning, it's almost like the literal meaning, it's like, it's hard to explain. Yes, it's a literal meaning, but at the same time, it's almost like it applies to God. But it's so hard to explain. But the language is there. It's just waiting for us to pick up on. But it's like the sound waves of the music's harmonies can have the ability to carry different levels of communication frequencies. And when we open up our mind and focus our awareness on God's love, we can tap into the higher layers of the sound wave frequencies and actually decipher the divine communication. We just have to open up our minds and ask God to send us a message through the music. When I was having my out-of-body experience, the heavenly voices actually matched the song's rhythm perfectly, because I think that they were somehow transmitted through the instruments in the song, even though to us in this dimension or in the state of consciousness that we're in right now, we just assume that the sound patterns that instruments create in music are nothing more than just nice sounds. But there's so much about our perception and our senses that we just don't know. Really, the same can be said about existence itself.